There's this one blood test that literally predicts if you're going to burn out. And the crazy thing is that your doctor will never ever prescribe or test you for this blood test. Now, for a little bit of context, I work with a lot of 7- and 8-figure founders, and we run blood work on every single one of them. And this specific biomarker that I'm going to show you is the thing that tells me if they're going to burn out or if they're going to be fine. And by the end of this video, you'll know if that biomarker, the number of that biomarker, is in the danger zone and what you can do about it to optimize it so that you never burn out and you perform at your best without ever burning out. So the actual number that I'm referring to is a hormone, a steroid hormone called DHEAS. So this hormone is essentially the burnout marker, and the reason that is because it's so highly correlated with another hormone, your stress hormone, your main stress hormone, your cortisol. So essentially the way it works is that when your DHEA is high, that indicates that your cortisol is low. And it's not just you go to the doctor, you do a blood test, and you see exactly your morning cortisol levels or your evening cortisol levels. It's more so, it's a reflection of your long-term, like the baseline, the average baseline of your nervous system in terms of your stress hormones. And when DHEA gets low, that means that your body is for a long period of time in survival mode or in chronic stress mode. So essentially, DHEA shows us the wear and tear of the nervous system, the wear and tear of your system. If you're recovering properly and if you are actually stressed out for way too long and your body is pretty much on fight or flight for the majority of the day. And that's why it predicts burnout earlier, because it's not like it all of a sudden goes down. It slowly will start degrading here, and you will see that your cortisol will slowly kind of replace it in terms of how high it's going to progressively be. And the other crazy thing is that we have the labs that you can do for yourself. You can go and do a blood test, and it will show you a reference range. Now, you take this reference range, you take the result, and you give it to your doctor, right? And your doctor is going to be like, it's only 130 micrograms per deciliter, so you're fine. You're not going to be, it's nothing dangerous. It's like within the ranges, and you have to understand that the ranges are from 100 to 400, so a big discrepancy, right? And those ranges are created through measuring thousands and thousands of people and figuring out a baseline, like an average in between them. We're not taking into consideration what is the optimal, like the top 0.1% of, if you're running a business working 80, 90 hours a week. On top of that, you're training. On top of that, you have all this physical and mental demand, which is already raising the stress threshold. The bar for your recovery gets so high that having a level of DHEA that would be considered normal for an average person who doesn't really demand that much of his body and brain, it's completely irresponsible to do. But the reason this happens is because, your doctor is not trained. Typically, most of the doctors are not trained to optimize your performance or optimize your health or prevent anything from happening years in the future. They're trained basically to treat a problem and a symptom, to treat the actual, to have a reactive kind of response to a problem to solve it, and not to actually optimize your performance. They're not viewing it from an optimizational lens. They're viewing it from a kind of like a treatment of the actual problem lens, if that makes sense. So when you view this from a perspective of it potentially flags, like having low DHEA potentially flags something that might happen in the future, your doctor is going to be, yeah, this is fine. You don't have to worry about anything, because he's like, is this in danger? Is this putting your life in danger right now? So for example, for you as a founder, or for like any optimal human being, the baseline should be at least 250, because again, as I said, the baseline, the floor for a stress threshold raises a lot, and you have to have a lot of wiggle room to make sure that you're recovering from all that extra stress. If you have any of these symptoms here, that probably is a good indicator that your DHEA is probably in the lower side. The symptoms you may feel is that you're tired but wired often, which means that you know that you're exhausted. You feel like you're exhausted and you're like kind of burnt out, but you can't relax. You're like your mind is always racing. You feel tired because you've worked all day and you've perhaps like moved a lot or done a lot of things today, but you can't relax. Your mind does not allow you to just decompress and relax. You go to bed and your brain is racing with thoughts and you feel exhausted, but you can't fall asleep. You have inconsistent energy throughout the day, and in particular around 2 to 4 p.m., you crash. Every day, no matter what you do, you just crash. And drinking more coffee or taking more stimulants might cover this symptom, but does not fix the issue. The other thing is that you can't, your brain just is not clear. You have what's called brain fog. So it takes you a while to connect the dots. And for example, if you're writing SOPs, or if you're doing mentally demanding work, you just have brain fog. And on top of all that, another thing that is affected is your mood swings. Sometimes you might be on top of the world, feeling great and happy, but sometimes you just snap at your team, snap at your partner, you're like very short fused, as it says here. Now, the solution to this, aside from so let's say you do the blood work and you figure out the number is low. It's not where it's supposed to be. And that is the case. I've seen this with hundreds of founders, by the way. It's way more common than you think, especially if you've been under-recovered, if you're working 12, 13-hour days and eating whatever is readily available, not really paying attention to your nervous system and recovering, really, not paying attention to your sleep. Because, money never sleeps, so the grind never stops. So you don't really think about those variables. They're not as important. And they are perhaps in your mind important when you scale and when you have the time or money to allocate to this. For now, it's just grind. And for a lot of people, I've seen so many memes of, the people that, works all day and only drinks coffee and has his notes, and the optimizer that does all those elaborate parts in the day and has this huge morning routine. But somewhere in the middle where you're paying attention to important things like your recovery, your exercise, your hormonal balance, that guy is going to outperform every other version of the optimizer or the bare bones guy. Because as Alex Ramosi says and has said hundreds of times, it's the guy that hammers the wall the longest without quitting at the same intensity that is going to win. Because the only way you can lose is if you quit. The only way you can actually lose at solving a problem, scaling your business to the next level, is if you quit. Imagine being able to hammer the wall for as long as you live without stopping. You're going to be unstoppable and you're going to be extremely successful. But what if you have your good months and then you have to recover for a couple of months because you're burnt out, and then you maybe go back and maybe have your good days, maybe you have your bad days. If you have inconsistency, there is someone out there outworking you, showing up at his 10 out of 10 every day without burning out. So how do you get at that level? First and foremost, DHEA requires protein to synthesize. So the building block needs to be there for you to have, for your body to be able to produce it. So that's the baseline. It's not too complicated. You just eat 35, and if you're really paying attention to your physical health, you want to build muscle, you want to look lean and just optimize the physical aspect of things, 35 to 50 grams per meal of protein, around 3 meals a day is the sweet spot. You fast for 3 to 5 hours in the beginning of the day. You have your first meal after those 3 to 5 hours, and then you have one meal after 2 or 3 hours after that point. So you have, let's say if you wake up at 7, you eat your meal at around 10 to 12 or something like that, and then you eat around 2 to 3, and then last meal of the day around 5, 6, around there. And that's, yes, you're going to go to bed at 10 or 11, but you have eaten your meal. That's a different topic, but you need to eat your meal at 3 to 5 hours before bed. That's a different kind of thing that I'm going to talk about here. The second thing is going to be morning sun in eyes. And I'm not telling this because Huberman told you or told me. It's not because of some magical woo-woo reason, but it's because bright light to the eyes first thing in the morning or within the first hour of waking is going to essentially calibrate the production of cortisol, DHEA, and all the hormones and chemicals your body requires to recover, recuperate, and perform when you go and sit down at your desk and work. So it's not just because you need to look and gaze at the sun to optimize your testosterone. It's because your body literally was designed to function with specific cues in the day. And morning sunlight is one of those important cues. I know it has been spammed by a lot of people in the industry that only know about a couple of things, but this is one of the important ones, one of the staple ones that you need to do. And then one thing that might hurt, that you might want to take with a grain of salt, is to take one full off day per week. I'm not talking about doing a couple hours, banging a couple hours of deep work. I'm talking about full off day, no laptop, no Stripe, no checking in with clients, nothing. The world is not going to end. If Elon Musk is able to rank at the highest echelons in video games and run 50 billion companies all at the same time, trust me, your little agency or your e-commerce or your consulting firm is not going to go bankrupt if you just take one day for yourself. Obviously, you have to have like your infrastructure in place for everything to work, but trust me, it's not gonna be as much of a big of a deal as you think it will be. The reason that this is important is because the hormone that we're trying to fix here, the burnout marker, DHEAS, recuperates and builds when your body is in recovery mode, when your nervous system is in rest and digest mode. You have, as you know, your two parts of the autonomous nervous system, the fight or flight, which is the sympathetic nervous system, which is related to cortisol and dopamine and adrenaline and focus and work and go. And you have the rest and digest mode, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is serotonin, oxytocin, calm, relaxed, and recovery mode, and deep sleep, REM sleep, and all that stuff. As founders, it's really hard for your brain to stop, to like have a clear cutoff and de-association between work and perhaps home, because you're always working from your device, you're always doing something. You're always like in the mindset of, if I'm not working, I'm not growing, and I need to leverage all the hours of the day as responsibly as possible, which is a great like grinder mentality to have, but it's going to burn you down to the ground eventually. And that's why if you want to, if you're doing those things, it's great. You're giving your body the foundations, the building blocks to start building the hormone that you need to keep you performing at your sharpest without burning out. But the problem is that you actually need the time for your body to trigger the production of it, which is going to be fully allowing yourself to get into recovery mode. So for that one day of the week, for me personally, that's Sunday. For a lot of people that I work with, it's Sunday as well. You know, you spend time with your family, you go have a lunch, you go to the beach, you go to the movies, just do something that has nothing to do with work. You go out for dinner, you go to the movies, you play video games, you read books, you spend time in in nature, in the forest, do hiking. Just do something that helps your body and your mind recover and stay calm. And that is going to actually allow you to perform at a much higher level and more sharp and more creative and more driven the next few days. And we had a client, Matthias, that was actually, when we first started working together, this level, his DHEA was at 90 micrograms per deciliter. And his, little do you know, his testosterone was a little bit lower. His cortisol was high. When cortisol is high, testosterone is going to tank. Those two are antagonists. So that means that you're like stuck in this phase where you're constantly you're trying to chase your tail because you're always behind on work. And the reason for that is because you're always kind of foggy and tired and you're not ever at your sharpest. You have your good days and then you have your bad days and you're kind of always inconsistent, which means you're never going to be as efficient as you truly could be in work. But a few things of the things that we actually implemented was the things that I mentioned here. So we set his sleep schedule to 11 from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. 3 meals a day at 35 to 50 grams of protein each. So around 150 to 160 grams of protein. And then 1 full off day weekly. So every Sunday, no emails, no Slack, no coaching calls, no sales calls, nothing. No filming videos, just something. Spend time with his girlfriend, in nature, in the beach. Do something that is zero to do with work. And little do you know, about 12 weeks after you had his level go up to 280 micrograms per deciliter. And it wasn't only the 3 things that we implemented that actually resulted in that, but it was the biggest needle movers because he was grinding himself, and eventually that would cause him to burn out. And look, if this video resonated with you, and if you would like to see where your DHEA where your level is, that means that you care about your performance. That means that you are actually paying attention to things. And I would like to let you know that I work one-on-one with a lot of founders to run blood work for them. And then based on the data that we actually gather, we build a custom protocol to help them operate at their maximum, physically and mentally, like mental athletes. And if you're interested in that and actually understanding the process of what do we test for, what are the tests, what kind of data we look at, and what are the steps of the protocol that we would take somebody to optimize their performance and their health, then what I'll done, as you see here, is I've left a link in the description below where you can click it and see what this process looks like. What are the tests that we do? How do we actually structure the protocols for you specifically? And see what some typical results you could expect. If you're interested in that, you can book a call with me so that we can talk one-on-one and discover your current bottlenecks and show you exactly what we were to implement. If we were to work together, what exactly would we do to help you get to the next level in your performance? So, without further ado, I'll leave you to it, and I'll speak to you, or I'll see you rather, in the next video. Peace.